Hey, you guys think you know which way it's going to go?
Yeah.
Well, you should head on and over to Sports Interaction, whatever sport. Sports Interaction has you covered pregame, live and betting, and all major sports. And, of course, your prop bets. If you want to bet, where do you go, guys?
Sports Interaction.
Sportsinteraction.com/STPN. Come on. 19 plus, please play responsibly.
Bo Horvat. I don't know if you've heard about this guy. Traded to the New York Islanders. Anthony Beauvillier. Ati Ratu.
Is it Ati? I called him Atu.
Oh,
that's how it's spelled. But I've seen Ati.
I also saw him on Tim and Friends, and he pronounced it, and I was like, I still don't know. Atu Ratti, excuse me.
No,
and a conditional.
Ratu. It's definitely Ratu.
It's Ratu.
Is it a Ratu?
I know that because of Nora Ratu, who was the goalie for Finland's women's team.
Okay, we'll say Atu Ratu. And a conditional first-round pick in the 2023 draft. Now,
we have a small group of half a dozen Finnish listeners who correct us on everything.
And that's great.
So this is your time to shine.
I'm happy. From Scott Wheeler's scouting report on Ratu for Canucks fans, he may not become a star, but he's got pro tools, including size, quick hands, and a decently hard enough shot. Slowly but surely, he has learned to hang onto the puck when necessary and play quick when required. He's not smart enough to drive a line by himself or make plays when he's less involved, so line mates will factor into success. But on the whole, and with the right development, I believe he'll provide good value. But Scott had him ranked at number 52. The Islanders drafted him in the first round, and he's done okay in Bridgeport this year. But the Bo Horvat trade itself, for a lot of people, surprisingly, you sometimes you see a win-win, sometimes you see a definite winner, definite loser. This time, a lot of people said it's a lose-lose.
Lose-lose. I was about to say, but that should indicate that the trade is just about right, I think. Because, all the Canucks didn't get enough, and the Islanders gave, it's not even that the Islanders gave up too much, it's that it doesn't make sense for the Islanders to be in on Horvat. I think there's two reasons why they did it this early. Number one, they don't feel like being a wild card team. So forget being the top wild card.
Because you don't want to play Boston.
You don't want to play Boston. I think, and I sort of just threw this in to my video, but Hurricanes fans, I'd be a little insulted. I think the Islanders have their eye on the Hurricanes and they think they can take them because they've done it before.
Oh, they want to play the Hurricanes
in the playoffs.
Oh.
Yeah. I think they think it's a good matchup for them. Potentially. And I think the Islanders like themselves in the playoffs. And if you're the Islanders, why wouldn't you?
Just get there. Just get there.
Yeah, I wouldn't fancy playing them.
No. They'll smother you, and they've got a great goaltender.
The rule books are different, and it will favor them.
Now, Dom Lucian has the Islanders' chances of making the playoffs 14% before this trade, 19% now. Here's the problem. Bo Horvat scores a lot of goals.
Yeah.
They needed that. The Islanders rank 31st in the league in goals on the power play.
Oof.
So that's, that will help. But here's a lot of people threw this out there about the early work that Lou Lamoriello has done here, and I thought this was an interesting thing. Let's say it all goes off the rails like the 18-wheelers that we've seen with the Leafs. Well, couldn't you then trade Bo Horvat at the deadline?
That is not a likely scenario. You know what? It's more likely than it ought to be.
Right.
So by making the trade early, you have all this runway to see whether or not it works. The trade deadline is March 3rd. It is February 1st. There's a lot of time, maybe not as many games as you would usually expect because of the All-Star break, but they have a lot of runway here. The Canucks retained 25% on Horvat.
I didn't realize that. Oh.
Yes, because it wasn't announced because the Islanders are a nightmare. But Friedge put it out there. So
Lou said it in the conference call.
That's
how
thank God.
Yeah, Lou himself announced it.
I'm glad he said that.
Yeah. Thanks, Lou. So they retained 25%. So what's 25% of 5.5? Or actually, if you look on Cap Friendly, you can see what Horvat's current cap hit is. So if the Islanders were to flip Horvat, they can retain up to 50 of what's left.
Yep.
Jesse's looking for it right now.
Waiting for the internet. Bo Horvat 4.125.
So that is very interesting because Beauvillier was 4.15. 4.25 4.25, you said?
125.
4.125. So Horvat and Beauvillier are almost a wash
Wow.
in this deal, which is incredible. So you're retaining 50%. Don't make me do math, but that is essentially like a $2 million, ever so slightly above a $2 million Bo Horvat. Every team in the league can afford that.
I think it's a scenario that's very, very highly unlikely.
I think it's highly unlikely.
As long as they're within a couple points of a playoff spot, Lou's not going to be like, okay, I'm pulling shoot on this. As much as we want this thing to happen, them double trading Bo Horvat's probably not happening.
Well, because the Islanders likely cannot keep Bo Horvat then, or obviously they wouldn't be keeping him, they'd be trading him. But once he becomes a free agent, it's unlikely he would return. And the Islanders need Bo Horvat for next year because this first round pick is an enormous wild card. It's top 12 protected. So if the Islanders don't miss it, there's a fairly solid chance it'll end up in the top 12, which means it goes to next year and it won't be protected.
Mm-hmm.
So you're potentially giving up. I mean, if the Islanders aren't a playoff team this year, they're definitely not a playoff team next year. And now you're talking about giving up potentially a top 3 pick.
I think by the time, I don't know, mid-March, April rolls around, we see 8.5 times 8.
Yeah, I
for
agree
Bo
with you.
Horvat.
I think
they're
that's
working on
likely.
the deal. They said they haven't had any negotiations. Bo Horvat said that's not for, like, I don't do that. I have my agents to do that. There haven't been negotiations just yet, but they're working on it. And I think it's going to be like 8.5 times 8. Whatever Vancouver wasn't willing to get up to, he'll get that in the Island because they don't have this. This is exactly what they don't have and what they haven't had for years. So why not just lock it up?
Someone in the Isles legal department is taking the contract they prepared last summer and scribbling out JT Miller and putting
That's exactly
or whoever else it was for.
No, the cap room was always there. The player fit is there. Give him the contract. Have him sign through next year. You don't have the first round pick if you suck anyways.
What I'm curious about Patrick Alvin was quite rosy in his summation of this trade. He said
rosy to the point of I do not believe they are his words.
Right. He said you could look at this trade like the Canucks acquired 3 first-rounders. Now, I think he was being cheeky because Ratu was selected in the first round, although many had him pegged in the second round. If you go back and look at central scouting and all that stuff, and not early in the second round, late in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Beauvillier, who was drafted in the first round 8 years ago.
I think he'll benefit a lot from this trade.
And then you've got the conditional first round pick. Now,
That's by definition, he's not wrong, I guess.
Wrong. You could look at it like that. In fact, you must.
He's
look at
not
it like
right
that.
either.
He's not right.
But what's weird about Beauvillier
He's
is that
more wrong than he is right.
he's a useful player. He's probably making a little too much money for his performance, although maybe he needs to change his scenery and a little more ice time.
He's 25.
26.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I'm
My video was on.
curious about Beauvillier because he doesn't seem to fit where the Canucks should be going.
This is another problem.
Like window-wise, he's now headed into his prime.
It's like they got another Kuzmenko. Like, yeah, okay, no, good. It's good to have good players, but what are you doing? If they don't take a big step forward next year, you can always trade Beauvillier.
Yeah, so he's an asset.
He is an asset. It's good to have assets, and then you
25.
Oh, he is 25.
Oh!
Okay. Sorry,
Nice
the Athletic
detective
was
Steve.
wrong then.
eat a bag of shit.
25 years old.
Big old bag of shit. What was I gonna? Yeah,
You're talking
you.
about Beauvillier.
Listen, the Canucks have to score their way out of every problem. The Islanders are incapable of that, and I think Beauvillier is going to go to a team where he's going to put up a number of points in a contract year, which is a great position to be in. I mean, if his agent advocated for this, I actually think it's a very good move.
Well, because they're going to have to be offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like
he
there's
wanted
no.
out of New York for a while now.
Oh, did he?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's no worse place to be as a young player in a contract year than on the New York Islanders. I'm not saying the team is bad. I'm saying that you go into every negotiation comparing yourself to your peers, and you're going to have less goals because that's just not what they do.
They don't score.
They don't score. They don't let you score. That's how they win every game, but they don't score. They don't score. Like, there's a reason you look at his numbers and he has like 30, 40 points every year, and you're like, how did he get 4? million. Well, because that's like 65 points.
Well, because
on
the
both
Islanders are
teams.
still the dead puck era.
They are. They are, man. So I think he's really going to benefit from being on the Canucks.
I think, too, Barzal's going to get a lot more assists. He finally has a guy who can finish.
So that's interesting because they have Lee, they have Brock Nelson, and they have Bo Horvat, all three guys who kind of score the same way. Then they have their designated creators in Bailey and Barzal. They don't really have guys who can do both. Horvat doesn't create well. If I had one big knock against his game, people talk about offense versus defense. What type of offense? He doesn't create it. He's a finisher, which is good. You need finishers. We keep talking about how it's allegedly the hardest thing to do in the sport, but I think the Islanders have gotten caught up in recent years with this idea that Barzal can just do everything.
Yeah. And he can't. It's not fair.
It's not.
Now,
back to the Vancouver piece for a second, because you're talking about Beauvillier going in the deal and how it doesn't really make sense. It's a look into that Jim Rutherford is still sticking by the words he gave in the press conference, because he said in the press conference that he's looking for guys in a certain age range, and it was a 23 to 26-year-old. And it's still, to me, that they're so hard-headed about the roster construction here in Vancouver that they still think they have a little bit of a window here, and they're not going to try and rebuild. Like, them adding Beauvillier to this deal and be like, okay, New York, we'll take on your problem here. That just, to me, screams like they're still not changing anything.
Well, and when they were in the bubble playoffs, who was better than Bo Horvat? He had 10 goals in 17 games. Which window does that fit?
But the Jim Rutherford, because I believe he's the one still orchestrating all this. Like, Patrick Alvin's out there talking, but it's not his words. Rutherford said he wants these players in this age range, which Beauvillier is, because they still believe that they can win.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous.
Yeah. We'll get to that, by the way.
What?
I'm not gonna interrupt the show. We're gonna keep having this conversation, but there's something we need to get to. So I just said stay off your phone.
Oh, okay.
Because it's worth it. Trust me. Sorry. And Jesse, I think you're right. I think there's.
I was just taking the time.
No, I'm just listen. I'm just telling you guys. I'm just kind of just show managing here. I want to say this. Bo Horvat thought he was going to be a Canuck for life. Canuck fans don't love that. Don't love hearing that. I want to ask, if you're a free agent in the NHL, and I'm not talking about a guy like who's like a fringe guy who's looking for a deal anywhere they can take it. I'm talking about a legitimate free agent, and maybe it's a while before the Canucks can even go out and sign that because they're right up against the cap with a bunch of bad contracts anyway. Why would you choose Vancouver at this point?
As a UFA?
Yeah.
It's a really nice city.
Yeah, sure. All that's true, but I'm talking about the organization.
Right.
There are plenty of really nice cities, and nothing against Vancouver. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
The guy who really wants to be there is the captain. All he wanted was an extension that was fair.
So maybe that's part of the reason why you're happy to get Beauvillier. He's a guy who's under contract.
Right? Yeah. It just seems like the organization needs to...
I still don't understand the direction. I don't get it.
Okay.
But, let's say this year, things really don't go the Islanders' way. The Canucks get the 13th pick out of it, and they choose to keep it. And they win the draft lottery. So they get Connor Bedard, and you pick whoever. You'd give that away like as a present to someone because you're in such a good mood. You have Connor Bedard. Rebuild done.
Fair enough.
Like, this is the thing. We talk about the Canucks have so much work to do and they got to do this. And I'm sorry, you get Connor Bedard. Literally anybody in this league gets Connor Bedard. Your rebuild's over.